I'm gonna have to ask you to tone it down and stop yelling at me. Something that I want to talk about is how hard it is to address anything that has a slightly negative connotation because of how uncomfortable words make people. If you've ever noticed things like this is what I'm talking about. If someone says some real racist shit, it makes people pretty uncomfortable. If someone else says, hey, that's kind of racist, that makes people way more uncomfortable. If someone engages in sexually predatory behavior, that makes people pretty uncomfortable. But if someone says, hey, that's sexual assault, ooh, that makes people way, 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 way more uncomfortable. We hate calling things what they are. We really hate giving names to uncomfortable things to describe them. I feel like we are constantly trying to use softer and softer language. Almost like we think we can eradicate bad behavior by eradicating the words we use to talk about it. Flaccid language, yeah. Limp. This is something, if there's any one way that I feel that I'm misunderstood, which it's not a feeling I typically have, but if there's one way I feel misunderstood, it's when it comes to people who might see me as being confrontational. My preschoolers used to see me sweeping the floors a lot and wiping down tables and putting things back where they go if they got misplaced. And they would say, wow, Miss Fieldy loves to clean. I don't love to clean, obviously. I would tell them I don't particularly like cleaning, but I really like when things are clean and where they go. And that's kind of the same thing here. I do not like conflict, but I like resolution. And you can't get resolutions without engaging with a conflict. If there's something uncomfortable and you just refuse to look at it, it makes that thing very, very blurry, nebulous. There are a lot of negative things that we just won't really look at because just the words that we have to describe it make us too uncomfortable. Empowering something by being afraid to call it what it is. Yeah. Yes. All right, here's something a little meta. Yesterday, I was talking on Twitter about how the day before I was talking on Twitch about those awkward situations where you're in a social situation, a party or something, and someone comes up to the person that you're with and starts talking to them and not you. And I was yeah. Hi, Domsy. Yeah. Yeah, and I used the word micro slight. And we had this long conversation kind of misunderstanding each other about what's implied by micro slight. I was just talking about how to deal with this like slightly rude situation. There's a content cop that touched on this. I want to see it. Well, it sounds right up my alley. Oh boy. Sorry, I'm just this Muhammad got me distracted. But yeah, the point of what I was saying was like, here's a healthy way to respond to this slightly awkward conversation. But this conversation got really kind of off topic because we didn't like the word microslight. They were kind of like, why are you spending your time getting offended instead of just moving on with your day? And I was kind of like, well, I'm not trying to be offended. I don't even really think I am offended. I'm just pointing out this uncomfortable situation and what you can do about it. But just using even very slightly negative words, like saying that something is rude, kind of puts the stop on things, you know? Like if you say that something's rude, you're allowed to do that without saying that the person who did it is a rude or bad person. Hell yeah, Carl, do it. Yeah. And yeah, it's hard because it pulls you into this kind of separate conversation that society is having. And it's really hard, you know, like you can't really talk about a problem without other people bringing in the perspective that they've had in other conversations. And then you start having conversations that aren't really with each other, just kind of like continuations of past conversations. Boy, what did I miss? Oh no, I didn't. Oh, my mom always told me to follow my dreams, so I had to come here and follow you. That's very cute. Thank you. Report her for missing it. I'm sorry. I'm trying to talk to you guys and read what you're saying without losing my trail of thought, which I do constantly. I have already kind of lost it, so we're just gonna abandon that line of thinking. I'm gonna talk for a second. I do not hate you. I love you. It was a really good conversation. Can I give advice? All right. I'm going to talk about, I'm going to share a little story that deals with sexual non-consent. So if you don't want to hear that, might check out for 5 or 10 minutes. This is something that happened like years ago when I was like 18. I was having a party at my house. Some friends from school, people I went to high school with, we were drinking, hanging out, like in the jacuzzi and stuff. I got tired and decided that I was going to go to sleep. I didn't want to end the party on my behalf, you know, so said goodnight to everybody. I told them they could hang out and they could keep hanging out in the backyard, whatever. When I got in bed, I was woken up sometime later by someone digging in my pants. So I removed the hand that was trying to get a feel down there, and you know, don't want this. So it's okay. It's okay. I'm sorry. This isn't going to be like, this isn't some tragic story. I'm just, this is just the most clear cut, I guess, instance I have of this, of saying no and being ignored, you know. No, I did not like this. I said, no, I'm sleeping. And I was really tired, you know, I'm like still a little drunk, groggy. I wasn't even really mad about this violation. I just really wanted to go to sleep. And this was kind of a thing where he tried again, like a few more times, where I was like, I don't want to hook up with you. Stop. And then kind of start going back to sleep. And then he senses that resistance is gone and tries again, you know, feeling me up, whatever. After a few tries of this, I'm like, I don't want to hook up with you. Stop. Get out of my bed. Yeah. And he started arguing with me. He was trying to get, he wanted me to just give him a blowjob. He's like, why will you just give me a little blowjob? And I'm like, no, I want to go to sleep. What are you? No, get the fuck out of here. And he tried to have an argument like, well, why not? Why won't you? Like, this was just something that I was just rudely refusing to give to him. And I had to explain at like 3 a.m, half asleep, that the reason that I wasn't going to wake up and give him a blowjob is because I did not want to. Unsatisfied with that answer, he kept asking, but why? Why not? Like, but why? Just a little one. What's the problem? And just, I had to explain at 3 a.m. that I don't want to is the only reason. There doesn't need to be an outside reason. I do not want to. Leave me the fuck alone. And with that, he finally stopped trying to grope me. I fell asleep. I woke up in the morning and he was still in my bed with his arm wrapped around me, like as if we had had a nice romantic evening together or something. And I just kind of slipped out. I just was like, peeled myself out from under him and went about my day. Right. Obviously told my friends about this in the morning, like just told them how weird it was, like and I'm not sharing this story to just talk about, like, this isn't a conversation about sexual assault or anything, but what bothered me so much about this was when I talked about it later with that group of friends when he wasn't present, and they knew what happened. They knew that he tried to initiate sexual contact with me while I was unconscious. They knew that I said no and that he kept trying, and knew that I told him to leave me the fuck alone and that he didn't. And at some point, I jokingly called him rapey. I was just like, we were talking, someone brought him up, and I'm like, oh yeah, the rapey one. And I'll never forget how much everybody recoiled when I said that. How uncomfortable that made everybody in the room. I think I made a little bit of distance in that moment that never was ever bridged again. I never talked to him again. I didn't have any expectation of anyone else doing the same, but they really didn't like that. And I think that's one of my clearest examples of a single word to accurately describe a situation making people so much more uncomfortable than the actual event. People, I mean, my friends should have recoiled at this story, not at me jokingly calling it rapey. Hey, Revan. Yeah, it's changed a little. there's so many other examples of this. It's like kind of hard to pick them out, but you know, I think a classic one is Thanksgiving dinner and your redneck uncle is just saying all this horrifying racist shit and the family's just sitting there respecting that opinion. Even if they don't agree with it, they'll just kind of sit there. And if you go, wow, and Uncle Inbred, that's really racist. Suddenly you're the one who just ruined Thanksgiving dinner, you know? And I think this relates a lot to mental health too. And the ways that we very much avoid making our problems real. We don't want to name them. I think most depressed people go through a long period of denial where they're like, I am not depressed. No, I am not. I'm constantly tired. I have no drive. I am sad most of the time. Don't have any direction in my life. Always anxious, but depressed? Absolutely not. As if you can just decide that something isn't the case because the word is scary. And the reason that I bring this up is because I know that the act of naming things has helped me deal with them a lot. If you have a problem that you wish you didn't have, you can't just decide that it really never was a problem, because it's going to sit there and bother you. And instead of having this nasty thing with a nasty name, you're going to have this confusion and just this vague sense of something being wrong that you're just not really able to identify. Trying to think of a way to tie a bow on this so we can move on. I guess I haven't quite gotten there. This is just what was something I was thinking about today is what a long time that you can spend. What a long time you can spend having a problem that you won't allow yourself to recognize as a problem. Today's topic, Europe, and do we need it? Can we eat it? Should it be converted into a yogurt? A lot of good questions. I think you're asking some better questions than I am right now. Yeah, I think that's kind of the end of my thought process on this. And listening to other people talk about their problems helped me a lot over the past all of my life, because you don't really see your own problems as problems. When people do things to you that aren't okay, it's a lot easier to just accept that as like a normal thing, or to worry about just keeping things peaceful instead of having a conversation about things that are harmful. Like, as if we don't talk about the harmful thing, then it can't hurt us, which is ridiculous. I think there's this big feeling that talking about a problem is what creates the problem. Shooting the messenger. If someone brings a truth to our attention that we don't like, instead of being upset about the events that caused this, we get upset at the person who showed us the uncomfortable thing, you know? So for that reason, I think a lot of people are unable to talk about the things that are harmful or hurtful. We want to keep the peace. It's not really peace. You don't have to sacrifice your inner peace for the appearance of smoothness for everybody else. You're not the pretty wallpaper of other people's lives. You don't have to pretend that everything is okay when things are not. And you're allowed to call things what they are, even if it feels like it's dramatic. It's not dramatic or confrontational to just call things by name plainly, without shying away from words that are scary to people. Yes, conflict is the first step towards resolution. And if something I was also thinking of a time. Oh, I'm not going to share that story, actually. People get hung up on intentions a lot. We don't want to talk about one. We have a hard time separating like single instances from like the bigger picture, especially when it comes to people. If someone does something that's not okay, we don't like to say that wasn't okay, because we feel like then you're saying like you're not an okay person. If someone does something predatory, people are very unwilling to call it that because they think that you have to take that entire person then and dump them in the trash or something. And people get real caught up on intention. Like, I don't think any of the people who have hurt me in my life had the intention to do that. But that doesn't mean that I can't look at what they did and recognize that it wasn't okay. It doesn't mean that I can't talk about it with other people either. So that's just a little something to think about. I think a lot of unhappiness comes from the inability to recognize the things that do make you unhappy, because you don't want to give a name to it. So you just kind of sweep it under the rug. And yeah, the fear of stirring the pot. Recognizing a conflict that is already there isn't creating conflict. It's just addressing it, and it's the right thing to do. So if you're very conflict averse, you just might think a little bit about what it is you need to do to look at the problems that you have fairly and what you actually need to do to get past that. So that is today's 4:30 p.m. coffee with Fieldy. I'm going to play some Bloodborne. And if you guys want to keep talking about this, we can, obviously. Hope that